Welcome everyone to the final Tuckshop Network meeting for this term. We're finishing up a little bit early because, well, we're actually racing towards the end of term, really, from an organisational point of view. And the numbers, the attendance at all of these meetings that are really specifically about smart choices have been really great. So obviously there's a lot of interest in there about how to interpret the strategy for use in the tuck shop, and that's really great. So to this stage, we've covered off on drinks according to smart choices, and we've also done savoury snacks and hot meals that you buy in to the tuck shop. So today we're talking about sweet snacks, whether you buy those in yourself or whether you bake in the tuck shop, and also cooking from scratch in the tuck shop. So they're the two sort of areas that we're going to be covering in the meeting today. And please feel free to ask any questions as we go, or feel free to save your questions to the end as well. And hopefully there'll be enough time for that. So I just wanted to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the lands across Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. We recognise that Australian Aboriginal peoples and Torres Strait Islander peoples each have their unique languages, beliefs, cultural practices, traditions and diversity within each culture. Okay, so I think I saw quite a lot of names on the list for people who've been to these meetings before, so I probably don't really need to introduce myself again. I'm the CEO and also project manager, project officer. I deliver most cost-related member services and also the funded project, the Healthier Tuckshop Support Project, which is the project that these Tuckshop Network meetings are delivered through. So just an overview of the meeting today. I'll go through a bit of an update from Quast and a little bit of background on smart choices for those who might be fairly new to this area and want to know a little bit more about the overall strategy, just brief on that. I'll be talking through sweet snacks and smart choices, and then go through if you're cooking from scratch in the tuck shop and how to interpret the strategy or translate the strategy for that. And then, of course, questions at the end. Okay, so cost update. Hopefully everyone should know well by now that there was a wage increase on the P&C award over the last holidays it was. So that went up 5.75% from 1st of September 2023 and backdated to that time. So hopefully everyone has seen their back pay from that wage increase, and seriously, it won't be too long before the next one is due to come around. We've had a lot of media coverage recently, and that was really just because the media were, they were listening to different things that they'd heard that we were talking about, and lots of inquiries talking about tuck shops struggling with lack of volunteers. As you know, well, most of you would know that it was volunteering week. Oh, it is volunteering week next week, I think, and the Queensland volunteering report came out earlier this week or last week, showing something that we already knew, that there's less and less people volunteering, and those who are volunteering, less and less time spent doing those volunteering activities. And, one of the reasons for that is this increasing cost of living. And in tuck shops, rising costs of doing business, rising costs of supplies and ingredients, and everything that you're using within the tuck shop. So much more difficult to break even or make a profit in the current conditions, because we know that everyone expects tuck shop food to be really affordable. So you've got a real sort of crunch on trying to keep your menu items affordable, but also covering the costs of doing business. It's really, really challenging at the moment. We've got a couple of new resources. So we've got a new stock take record, and we've updated the staffing expenses calculator based on the new wage rate. So if you remember, jump online and have a look at those. And then last week we attended the Queensland Association of State School Principals conference in Brisbane, and this week, we're heading along to the PNC's Queensland Conference down at the Gold Coast. So if you tend to go along to that conference, please come and say hello. Or if you know that your PNC is coming along, we love to see members come along and say hello to us. But we also love to see any schools that aren't members to come and take advantage of our membership services. We're actually offering a conference special discount for membership. So if you're not a member at the moment and you wanted to get a little bit of a cheaper price for membership, we're offering a 15% off discount just because we know how difficult it is in the economic conditions at the moment. So trying to help PNCs and tuck shops out in that regard. So upcoming training, we have a couple of food safety supervisor courses coming up Monday, 20th of May. Actually, sorry, that one's changed. It's the 27th of May now, which is an online. No, it's not. I'll correct myself again. Monday, 20th of May is online, and then we've got a face-to-face one on Monday, the 27th of May. That was rescheduled from this week. And then Tuesday, 4th of June, we've got an online option as well. And then we'll be delivering the Pathway to Profit course on Monday, the 27th of May online, and the Convener course Monday, the 3rd of June online. So we offered both of those in the April, that Easter school holidays, and they were face-to-face. And now it's time for those who are outside of Brisbane, if they weren't able to come to the face-to-face course, to be able to access that training as well. And all of those dates are on our website as well. So heading now into the main event around this Tuckshop Network meeting, talking about the Smart Choices strategy. So hopefully everyone knows that strategy doesn't belong to Quast. It is a Department of Education strategy, and the implementation of that strategy is mandatory. It always has been. However, there is no monitoring or reporting against that strategy. And so basically it is up to the discretion of the school, the PNC, and the principal as to whether that strategy is being implemented across the whole school environment. And it is across the whole school environment. It's not just for the tuck shop. It's for any times when foods and drinks are being served to students within the school environment. We know that strategy is quite old, so it was released in 2007, the Ready Reckoner was updated in 2016, and the last update, which is a very small update, was 2020. So as an organisation, Quast has been advocating for many years to have a review and update of that strategy to make it more practical and reflective of the current food supply, and also the policy environment in terms of healthy food and drink supply policy more generally in the community. So Smart Choices has two main documents to it. There's the strategy, and all of these documents are found on the Department of Education website. The strategy, which contains background information about the traffic light system, the green, amber and red, and the strategy is where you find the nutrient criteria, also known as the red tables. And then a separate document is the Ready Reckoner, which is a set of tables, which is a general guide on the common foods and drinks that you might be serving in the tuck shop and where they're likely to sit against Smart Choices. So the first, well, we'll talk through, how to use Smart Choices, but the first piece of advice is to go to the Ready Reckoner first and get a bit of an idea of where the food or drink is likely to sit. And if you think it could sit in either red or amber, that's when you need to go to the strategy and look at the nutrient criteria or the tables to further analyse that product. So the current, the Ready Reckoner and the update of Smart Choices in 2016 was to make it based on the 2013 Australian Dietary Guidelines. They're old as well, and they're currently being updated. So the timeline for that updating is consistently blowing out, but what we hear at the moment is that the new Australian Dietary Guidelines will be released in 2026. And for us, we think that's a really good time to update Smart Choices based on the new Australian Dietary Guidelines in 2026. So that's what we're really pushing for, is for the Queensland Government, for the Department of Education to really get their skates on and start reviewing Smart Choices in time for the 2026 Australian Dietary Guidelines. We know that Smart Choices is fairly poorly implemented across the whole school environment. And we know that there's lots of reasons for this, that it is very challenging to implement that strategy properly. We, as an association, a member association, we interpret the strategy and support and assist tuck shops to implement that strategy better. And as I've mentioned a couple of times, we advocate for review and update for better and easier implementation of the strategy. So, as I mentioned, the Ready Reckoner is tables of foods commonly supplied in Queensland schools, separated into the green, amber and red categories. In that Ready Reckoner document, there's no nutrient criteria. It's just a guideline on types of foods and drinks. So I'm stressing again that when you're using Smart Choices, it's important to use both of the documents so you've got all of the information at hand. Okay, so today we're talking about snack food, bars and baked goods in terms of those products that you might buy in to the tuck shop. And there's two different categories that these types of sweet snacks would come under within Smart Choices. So there's the snack food bars and sweet biscuits. So things like muesli bars, cookies, slices, bliss balls and energy balls. You would look at the nutrient criteria for snack food, bars and sweet biscuits. And then the other category within this section is cakes, muffins and sweet pastries. So obviously cakes, muffins, donuts, scrolls and danishes would all sit within that cakes, muffins and sweet pastries category. So looking more specifically into the Smart Choices red tables or the nutrient criteria, this is the table that you're looking for if you're assessing these foods that you would buy in a package in the tuck shop. So there's two sections in there. So the snack food bars and sweet biscuits, this is the criteria. Oops, sorry. This is the criteria that you're using to assess snack food bars and sweet biscuits, muesli bars and that kind of thing. And then if it's cake, muffins or sweet pastries, this is the criteria that you're using. So you can see they're slightly different. And for both of these types of products, when you're looking at the nutrition information panel and trying to make a call as to whether that product meets Smart Choices or not, you need to assess these products per serving. And that's different to the hot foods and the pastries, the savoury pastries that we talked about in the previous Smart Choices meeting. When you're looking at hot meals and pasta dishes that you buy in and also your pastry products, you're assessing those products per 100 grams. But for these snack foods and sweet biscuits, cakes, muffins and pastries, you're assessing per serving. So when you're looking at the nutrition information panel, it's per serving, not per 100 grams. And to help you out a little bit, we're going to go through a case study of a type of product where you would look at this nutrition criteria to make a call as to whether it's amber or red. So we're going to look at muesli bars, and you can see on the slide there's two different types of muesli bars. There's the chewy apricot ones and the yogurt covered ones. So we'll have a look at both of those to decide whether it's amber or red. So looking at the yogurt covered ones, you can see here the first thing, as I mentioned earlier, the first thing you want to do is go to the Ready Reckoner and check to see whether it's green or whether it's likely to be amber or red. And so you can see in the Ready Reckoner, cereal bars, fruit bars, muesli bars, breakfast bars, energy bars and sweet popcorn are all in this snack food bars section. And you can see here that they could be amber or they could be red, and the advice is to assess against the snack food bars and sweet biscuits category. You can see also there that the Ready Reckoner states that bars with added confectionery such as chocolate chips, drizzles, yogurt coatings or similar are red. So before we go any further with this yogurt covered muesli bar, you can see there that the Ready Reckoner clearly states that anything with yogurt coatings are red. So this product, this particular muesli bar that has yogurt covering on it, would be assessed as red against Smart Choices. But what about the apricot, the chewy apricot one. So that one doesn't have yogurt covering. So now you would go to the nutrition information panel to find more information based on the nutrient criteria. So I know this is probably very small, but this is just to show you that when you're looking at the nutrition information, in all nutrition information panels, you would tend to have per 100 grams column and then a per serving column. And remember that for this particular category, you want to be assessing products per serving. So the things that you're interested in here is the total energy per serving, the amount of saturated fat per serving, and the dietary fiber per serving. So they're the three nutrients that you're looking at when you're assessing this particular type of product. So looking for the nutrition information panel, which is on the back of the package, and find the per serve column. So the next thing you go to is finding the correct table and the correct category within the Smart Choices strategy. So the table is snack foods and drinks assessed per serving. And then the category within that is your snack food bars and sweet biscuits. So the criteria that you're looking for is per serving, these products need to be less than 600 kilojoules. They need to have less than 3 grams of saturated fat per serving, and they need to have less than 1 gram of, more than 1 gram of fiber per serving. So they're the 3 numbers that you're interested in when you're assessing a muesli bar type product or anything else that's in that snack food bars and sweet biscuits. So this would be cookies as well, slices, and bliss balls and that kind of thing would come under this section here. So looking back at the nutrition information panel for that particular product, you can see here, hopefully you can see it, that the energy is 490 kilojoules per serving. And the Smart Choices criteria says that that needs to be less than 600. So you've got a tick for that. Yes, that's fine. Saturated fat, in the product, it's 0.6 grams per serving, and Smart Choices requires it to be less than 3 grams. So that's a tick as well. And then fiber needs to be more than 1 gram. And you can see here that the fiber is 3.6 grams for that product. So overall, that product is assessed as amber because it fits within all of those criteria. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. And for any product that you buy in that's within the snack bars, biscuits, sweet biscuits, cookies, bliss balls, that this is the nutrient information that you're looking for, and you're finding it on your product per serving on the back of the package for the nutrition information panel. Does anyone have any questions about that before I move on?
No.
No. Okay, so next case study, looking at cakes. So cakes, let me just say right at the outset, it's very difficult to find cakes that fit the criteria for Smart Choices. So let's move on. So hopefully, or a lot of you will probably recognise these particular products, Cool School choc cake slices and Cool School vanilla cake slices. So they're both home-style bake products available to school tuck shops under their Cool School range. So the first step is have a look at the Smart Choices Ready Reckoner. So looking under the sweet baked products, cakes, biscuits, pastries, etc. All of those different types of products would be assessed under this. And then you can see that they could be amber or they could be red. So you need to assess against that particular category, the cakes, muffins and sweet pastries category. The other thing is that if any of these sweet baked products are iced, have sweet cream fillings or contain confectionery like chocolate chips or lollies, they are automatically red. They might be amber if they're home baked or baked on site using modified recipes. And, it just gives a bit of guidance. We'll talk a little bit more about cooking from scratch in a tuck shop. The other thing that Smart Choices requires is that servings need to be small. So small to medium of 30 to 40 grams, which is very, very small. That's a very small serving size. If you, put any of your muffins on the scales and measure or weigh how heavy those muffins are, you'll find that a lot of them actually are much more than the 30 to 40 grams. So keep that in mind if you're cooking in the tuck shop as well. So looking at these Cool School products, you can see here, this is the nutrition information panel. So you may get this from the supplier. If you get products in these categories where you need the nutrition information panel and it's not immediately available, you should be able to get that information from your supplier. And then for this particular category, you need to find the per serve column. So this is the Cool School cake slice. So you can see here, one serving is 30 grams. So that's fitting within the 30 to 40 grams that is suggested in the Ready Reckoner. And then this is your nutrient information. So let's go to the next slide and have a look at the nutrient criteria. So again, going back to this table, which is snack foods and drinks, which are assessed per serving, and going to the cakes, muffins, and sweet pastry category. So you can see here the numbers are slightly different to the snack food bars and sweet biscuits that we just looked at. So per serving for the kilojoules, those products need to be less than 900 kilojoules. So that's a little bit more generous than the snack food bars and biscuits. The saturated fat is the same. It needs to be less than 3 grams per serving. But the fiber is actually the criteria that is the most challenging for this particular category, to have more than 1.5 grams of fiber per serve, because unless you're making these products with fruit added and with wholemeal flour, it's very unlikely that they're going to meet the fiber criteria. So going back to the chocolate cake slice, the Cool School chocolate cake slice, you can see here the kilojoule content definitely is under 900 kilojoules at 393 per serve. Saturated fat is 1.7, which is less than the 3 required, and the dietary fiber just meets at 1.5 grams. And if you look at the ingredients of this particular product, the chocolate cake slice, they actually have added extra fiber to that product. And that's because it's made in, I guess, a bit of a factory or a large bakery where they're able to modify recipes like that to increase the fiber content. And, you know, that's quite a difficult thing to do in a cake that you're making in a tuck shop yourself, to have it still palatable and bake well and perform well with that much higher fiber content. So keep that in mind as well. But overall, this particular product is assessed as amber. Okay, so that's talking about products that you would buy in to the tuck shop, where you're looking at the nutrition information panel and comparing that to nutrient criteria within the Smart Choices strategy. But what about if you're going to be cooking in the tuck shop yourself? How do you know whether something that you've made is green, amber, or red? And there is actually not a huge amount of guidance within Smart Choices in terms of assessing meals and menu items that you're cooking in the tuck shop. But as a general rule of thumb, when you're thinking about trying to make something healthy in the tuck shop, the aim would be to include as many vegetables, salad, and fruit wherever possible. So obviously in savoury dishes, adding as many vegetables or salad within the recipe is great. And for baked products and sweet products, adding fruit wherever possible. The other thing, when Post does our menu health checks, for example, and we're assessing tuck shop made items, one of the things that we're looking for to make them greener is to have as many different basic food groups represented within that recipe as possible. So you can see here, hopefully that's not too small for you to see, that you've got the different food groups. So you've got breads and cereals here, you've got meats and alternatives, you've got rice, grains and pasta, vegetables and legumes, and dairy. So when we're assessing tuck shop made recipes, what we're looking for is as many different food groups represented. So to give you an example, you might be making a macaroni cheese. And macaroni cheese, if you're making it with plain pasta and a reduced fat cheese and a reduced fat milk, that would be a green product. We would definitely assess that as green because the ingredients are both green. But if you can add vegetables to that, so some pureed pumpkin or some processed cauliflower, for example, that's adding in an extra food group, and that's making that product healthier. So there's lots of ways that you can, make menu items healthier by covering off on as many different food groups within the menu item as you can. And the third strategy is aim to choose healthier options within the food groups. So white pasta, white rice, white bread are all assessed as green, but there's a missed opportunity to make them even healthier if you're not choosing the wholemeal or whole grain varieties of those. With dairy products, Smart Choices still requires that dairy products are reduced fat to be assessed as green. If they're full fat, then they would be assessed as amber. That's not the same with your cereal products. You don't have to have wholemeal or whole grain to make those products green, but from a nutrition perspective, it is a better option to include whole grains or whole meals wherever you can. And similarly with meats, there's generally not too many requirements around choosing your leaner meats to make them green or amber, unless it's processed meats. And then most processed meats would tend to be a red product. So the leaner meat you can get, especially when you're considering your budget and how much it costs you to buy that meat, would make any of your recipes healthier, the leaner meat that you use, balanced with your budget, obviously. So as I mentioned, there's limited guidance in Smart Choices, but I'm going to talk through 3 different scenarios that, for example, as I mentioned, when we do our menu health checks, how we assess whether a Tuckshop made item is green, amber, or red. So the 3 scenarios are: the recipe or the menu item is made mostly from green ingredients. The recipe or menu item would be could be made from both green and amber, or the recipe or menu item could be made from green, amber, and red ingredients, or a combination of those. So they're the 3 scenarios that we're going to talk through. So you can see here, really the only thing that the strategy talks about when it talks about cooking on site is this green table here, which says prepare on site, use reduced fat and reduced salt products, include salads and vegetables. So this is for cost. When we're talking about healthy menus, this is where it's at for us. We want to see as much cooking as possible within the tuck shop. And again, considering your budget, considering your labor force, whether you've got volunteers or not, as much cooking in the tuck shop as you can manage, following these guidelines here. So let's go through the 3 scenarios. So the first one, main meals made from green ingredients. So when we assess a menu and you've got a menu item that's made from all green ingredients, we say it's green, no problem there. But we also, we can't really give bonus points, but we would like to say that including vegetables, salad, and fruit wherever possible, including as many different food groups within the recipe as you can, and then aiming to choose the healthier options within the food group, so wholemeal or whole grain cereal products, etc. So I'm just going to go back to this previous slide, looking at these food groups. If you're familiar with the Australian Dietary Guidelines and the 5 food groups, what you're aiming for is recipes. If you're making recipes that just have those 5 food groups, just products from the 5 food groups, the healthy 5 food groups, then it's likely that that recipe will be assessed as green. So that's automatically green. Main meals made from a combination of green and amber ingredients. And this is where it gets a little bit more tricky. You need to consider the proportion of the major ingredients within that recipe. Now, if you're using breaded chicken or a fish product, so your chicken goujons, your chicken nuggets, and your chicken patties and that kind of thing, and fish fingers, it doesn't matter how much vegetables or salad, that product is always going to be amber, because those products are highly processed. They contain extra sodium, extra fat, and limited nutrition. And we've got a fact sheet on how to serve chicken nuggets in the tuck shop, which talks a little bit more about why those products are always amber. If you're making a recipe or a menu item that includes lean meat plus bread and maybe reduced fat cheese, we would rate that in our menu health check as amber. And the reason is there's a missed opportunity for addition of vegetables or salad in that product. So just keep that in mind. If it's just lean meat and bread, plus or minus reduced fat cheese, the most that that product would get, or that recipe would get, would be amber. And for any other recipes, if you've got a good amount of vegetables or salad, or any really vegetables or salad, especially if it's got reduced fat cheese and a lean meat, we would tend to rate that recipe as green. So again, going back to these strategies here, including as many different food groups as possible and choosing the healthier options within your different food groups. So wholemeal or whole grain cereal products, reduced fat dairy, leaner meats, etc. So the third scenario is main meals made from green plus amber plus red. Now, there's some products that will automatically gain a red rating for any recipe that you use them in, and they're listed on this screen here. And so again, when we're doing menu health checks and rating Tuckshop made items as red, amber, or green, if we see any of these ingredients used in a decent amount within the recipe, then that recipe will attract a red rating. So any fried foods, anything that's been deep fried, will end up becoming a red product. So anything with corn chips, unfortunately, and I know that nachos are extremely popular with kids and we see them on lots and lots of menus that we assess, we will always assess nachos or anything with corn chips in it, or any recipes that include fried foods as a red product. Anything with puff or shortcut crust pastry. And I know that there's lots of people who love to make sausage rolls in the tuck shop, and basically we rate all of those products as red, unless, and I'll talk through in a couple of slides time, there is a way that you can analyze a recipe and generate a nutrition information panel, and then you can use that nutrition information panel to look at the criteria in Smart Choices, and I'll talk through that a little bit more. But generally we would say if you have got any sort of product that contains a recipe that contains puff or short crust pastry, we would tend to rate those red. Butter, now if it's just in a very small amount, it would be up to our discretion how we would rate that. But if it's just a small amount of butter in a larger recipe, I would tend to say that that recipe would be amber. But if it's a lot of butter, I'm struggling to think of an example, but if it's if it's a baking recipe, for example, like a cake or something that contains significant amount of shortening and you're using butter, then we would rate that red. Anything with cream or full fat sour cream, we would rate as red. So if you use a reduced fat or a light sour cream, again, it would be at our discretion, but we would have a look at what other ingredients are in that recipe to make a determination. But generally, if there's cream, we would say, can you replace that cream with evaporated milk, for example? Or if you've got full fat sour cream, maybe you could, swap out some of that for a natural or a Greek yogurt, for example. And then finally, coconut milk and coconut cream, again, would attract a red rating. So any curries that you're making, if you can swap out the coconut milk or cream with evaporated milk and some coconut essence, you get the same effect in the end and you get the same flavour. But coconut milk and cream are both very high in saturated fat, and that's why we generally tend to rate those as red straight away. Unfortunately, if you're making dairy-free recipes, you can't change the coconut milk out with evaporated skim milk. We understand that, but any time that you can avoid using coconut milk or cream in your recipes, then that would be a good idea. Okay, so that's sort of your main meal items. What about if you're baking in the tuck shop? And so our advice here is to choose wholemeal flour wherever possible, and a good way to start that process might be to swap out half of the white flour for half wholemeal if you're worried about how that's going to make the end product in terms of, I know myself, swapping out the full amount of flour to wholemeal flour can make the baked products very dense. So maybe half and half is one way to increase the fibre content of the baked product. The other thing is to include other high fibre ingredients wherever you can. So rolled oats or quick oats, fruit and pureed vegetables, even in some of those baked products that have, black beans or beetroot, for example, into your baked products. Always try and use vegetable margarine or vegetable oil instead of butter, because butter is very high in saturated fat. And as soon as you introduce any chocolate or confectionery ingredients, including yogurt buttons and white chocolate, obviously, in baking, it will make it a red product. And also no icing. And that's really according to the Smart Choices Ready Reckoner. Any baked product that includes icing will be automatically assessed as red. So that's baking in the tuck shop. Now, if you're following all of those strategies that I've talked through, and you're not satisfied that the product is automatically red, you think it is quite a healthy product yourself, there is an option to actually do an analysis of your own recipe. Now, I would love to say that Quast could offer to do this service, but it is a very intricate process to go through. And we just do not have the capacity to do that. But if you go onto the Quast website and go under the Smart Choices section, so recipes and menus, Smart Choices, there is a section called Assessing Menu Items. And so there's a link, obviously, to Smart Choices there. And then there's a little section about rating tuck-shop-made menu items. So if you're making them from scratch, you get more control over those ingredients. You can include less fat or a different type of fat, lower sugar, for example. And as I've just said, most recipes made from scratch will be rated as green unless you're using unhealthy ingredients like pastry, butter, cream, or coconut. If you want to analyze your own recipe, you can actually click on this link here, which is the Fazant's Nutrition Panel Calculator, and that generates a nutrition information panel, which you can then use against the Smart Choices. So this is what if you click on that link, it takes you to this web page and to this nutrition panel calculator. So I'm just going to show you what it looks like if you analyze your own recipe. So this recipe is the winner of the Recipe of the Year competition last year, the butter chicken, by Angelique at Southport State School. And for all of the recipes that are entered, if we're considering putting those recipes through to a finalist, then we put all of the ingredients into that nutrition panel calculator and then generate this nutrition information panel. So that's the nutrition information panel for the butter chicken. Pardon me. So the next step would be I'll go back to that. Once you've got your nutrition information, the next step is then to find which table within Smart Choices you would need, or which criteria you would need to compare that against. So if it's a main meal, a main hot meal, or even a salad, or something like your sausage rolls that you're making in the tuck shop, you would use the hot food items assessed per 100 grams. And so these are the numbers that you're looking at. So energy, you would want to be less than 1,000 kilojoules per 100 grams, saturated fat less than 5 grams, and sodium less than 400 grams. So if I'm just going to go back to the previous slide and this nutrition information panel, you can see here per 100 grams, the number is 729. So this is for the butter chicken. If against Smart Choices, we need that number to be less than 1,000. Saturated fat, that needed to be less than 5. So that's easily within that range at 0.6. And sodium needs to be less than 400. And you can see there that it's 363. So butter chicken was assessed as consistent with Smart Choices. But if you're doing any baking of any of these other types of products within the tuck shop, these would be the categories. So if it's snack food bars and biscuits, if you're making cookies in your tuck shop, or making your own muesli bars or bliss balls, for example, you can put the recipe that you've got into that nutrition panel calculator and then look at these numbers to see if your tuck shop made baked item fits with the criteria. Similarly with the savoury snack foods and the cakes, muffins and pastries. So that's the nutrient criteria that you're looking at for those. And that brings me to the end of the presentation for the session today. So I'm happy to open it up to questions. I'll just have a quick look at the chat. I'm going to, nothing in the chat. Does anyone have any questions based on what we've talked about today?
No, it's pretty straightforward.
In a way, but there's a lot of chopping and changing, going backwards and forwards between the Ready Reckoner and the strategy, looking at the nutrient criteria. But, you know, what we say when we're doing the menu health checks and aiming for healthier menus is, as I said, trying to make as much from scratch as possible, trying to use the healthier types of ingredients from each of the different food groups, and trying to include covering off as many of the different food groups within particularly your main meals as you can. So rather than just meat and vegetables, getting some dairy in there, or rather than just meat and bread and cheese, getting some vegetables in there. And that way you're increasing the variety and hopefully the fiber and other nutrients like calcium and iron and all of those nutrients in those Tuckshop made items. And, you know, one of the things that when Smart Choices is going to be reviewed, we'd like to see it have much more guidance and information in there around how to cook in the tuck shop, how to make meals from scratch that are much healthier, you know, that don't include those ultra processed food ingredients, that, you know, these industrial ingredients that we've talked about previously. So anything that has a nutrition information panel on it tends to have lots of different ingredients that you wouldn't use if you're cooking in the tuck shop yourself. So all of those thickeners and emulsifiers and humectants and all of those types of ingredients that are used in factory-made food preparation. You can avoid all of those types of ingredients if you're cooking from scratch in the tuck shop as much as possible. And that, you know, that's what we'd really love to see. But we also understand it's a balance between how many staff you've got in there, and, you know, whether you've got volunteers to help you with that, and, you know, how busy your tuck shop gets, and also how extensive your menu is. You know, we do recommend trying to keep your menu as brief as possible, so you're not over committing yourself to doing lots and lots of intricate cooking, you know, using the batch or the bulk cooking method as much as you can. And we've got a couple of students working with us at the moment. They're developing a fact sheet around bulk cooking or batch cooking in the tuck shop. And so watch out for that one. It should be ready before the end of term 2. And that will be a member only resource. So that will be on our website available, and we'll also do some social posting around that. Okay. So somebody's just sent through a question. We use a light coconut cream in our gluten-free, dairy-free butter chicken. Do you have any suggestions to replace coconut cream and keep it dairy-free? Not really, but if you can use a light coconut milk, that would reduce the amount of saturated fat. So light coconut cream is probably around the same level of saturated fat as coconut milk, but if you go to light coconut milk, then that would just make it slightly lower in saturated fat overall. Somebody else has said we've switched to Nuttalex. Is that better than butter? From a taste perspective, I'm not sure, but certainly from a saturated fat perspective, Nuttalex is a polyunsaturated vegetable margarine, so it has very, very low saturated fat in it. So yes, from a Smart Choices perspective and a home baked product perspective, Nuttalex is a better choice than butter. Any other questions?
No.
I had a question. I probably missed this very basic one. Obviously, you're aiming to be mostly green. What would be the maximum percentage of, say, red that you would want to see on any menu?
Well, to be consistent with Smart Choices, we really say you can't have any red on a menu. Yeah. The interpretation of Smart Choices is red should only be served twice per term. Yeah. Across the whole school environment, and unless your tuck shop's open only twice per term, having a red item on the menu would make it inconsistent with Smart Choices. But really, it is very difficult to have a menu that has no red on it. We know that. Our menu health checks are based on the Smart Choices strategy, but you know we don't, you know, we're not the Smart Choices police. And if you're in your tuck shop doing as much as you can to cook from scratch and include healthier ingredients in the items that you're making within the tuck shop, we think that's a great success. And nobody monitors smart choices, and I would rather see, I probably shouldn't say it too publicly, but I would rather see lots of tuck shop made items with healthier ingredients and 1 or 2 red products than a whole heap of heat and serve amber and no red, because cooking in the tuck shop, including the healthier ingredients, getting more fruits and vegetables from a nutrition outcomes perspective for children is a much better outcome than having a lot of the grey and the orange and the white food in tuck shop. We need to get a lot more colour and texture and vegetables and fruit as much as possible across the menu.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for coming along. We had 27, so I'm not sure where the other 50 people went, but that's okay. We'll pop this one up on the website, and so if there's anything you missed or you want to hear again, as I mentioned at the beginning, Chrissy does a great job of time stamping, so she'll put in there links to the sections of the presentation today, so you'll be able to just click on, go straight to the section that you're interested in watching back. So thank you everyone.
Thank you very much.
Great afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.